Dr. Jazz.
I'll just jump in, Brian. I've listened to your music for such a long time. Being a
Uh-huh.
guitar player, I loved Vic Juris and, Ben Monder and all these guys you've played with. And
Yeah.
of course, then I encountered your name when exploring these guys. And
Uh-huh.
also in the last one, Jackpot, you have Ed Cherry, who's like, in my opinion, one of the most underrated players out there.
Yeah,
And,
he plays perfect.
Oh,
He has so much experience, is what it really is. There's a lot of experience.
yeah. And how did you, I mean, I wanted to ask about Jackpot because, it reminded me kind of this Melvin Ryan, Jack McDuff, Jimmy Smith, West Grant Green sound came to my mind. But
That's Melvin Ryan was like my big, yeah, the beginning Melvin Ryan. And that's the organ that Jimmy Smith played on, which was pretty incredible.
oh wow.
Yeah, that Jackpot was recorded in Van Gelder, where all the Blue Notes were made.
Oh wow. So it's that organ actually.
That's the organ, yeah.
Oh shit,
So,
man. Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah. And it's a pretty witchy place, man, It's an incredible sound. When I listen to the drums, it sounds like the sound of the place, to me.
Yeah.
And the sound of it, I think it's my best sounding album overall. Like the mix and the things like this, I think were very good. And it was a lot more traditional than a lot of my other albums. But, a lot of people, they were asking me to do something a little more traditional, especially the organ fans who are a little, sometimes some of my other stuff is a little too far out for them.
Yeah, they're more, yeah.
And I love to play super traditionally as well, like I kind of I don't really have one way that I like to play or one kind of music that I like to play, I really like them all. And I can do, I'm really into pure traditional older style. Like that's what that album was. It was like, I wrote those bebop heads. They're bebop heads. The sounds and the drawbar settings are influenced by my favorite classic organ records and stuff like that. I'm playing in the place where a lot of those records were made. So it was an incredible opportunity. I don't know if you've ever spoken to Cory Weeds, but he would be an incredible person to speak to on your program. He's kind of like first of all, he's playing terrific on the album. And also he's playing a king saxophone, which is kind of a different, everybody plays Selmers, and the king's kind of an older kind of sound. And we have been friends for a long time, and I've been going to play for him in Vancouver for many years. We've just been kind of talking about this for a long time, and it just kind of came together like this. Yeah. So that's the story.
What about Ed? When did
Ed, I've also
Ed?
known, I've played gigs with Ed for many, many years.
Oh, really? Okay.
And we are on albums together, on a bunch of albums. I don't even know how many. I don't think he ever played on my albums before.
No, yeah, I don't think so.
I might be on one of his albums. We definitely record for other people as a members of a rhythm section a few times, maybe for Positone. Yeah. I can't even remember. But Ed, I've known I've known him for like 27 years,
Wow, okay.
We just play gigs together. So Bill, that was the first time. I had met him from playing with Larry and Peter, Larry Goldings and Peter Bernstein, of course. And that was Cory's idea, because Cory had worked with him before. And of course, it was kind of the perfect complement for everything that we were trying to do with the album.
Yeah.
And he plays brilliantly, Yeah.
How much was You mentioned Larry Golding.
Say again?
You know, the trio with Peter and Larry that they have.
Or-
How
Of
much
course.
was that important for you, that trio? You remember seeing them in New York, or like?
I've seen them a bunch of times. I know the guys very well. I would say they're a very traditional organ trio. I don't know if my compositions are like Larry Golding's. I would say no. But I have, of course, you know, I was there the night they recorded Live at Smalls. We were playing before.
Oh, wow,
And this
okay.
record I love very much.
Yeah.
The last time I saw them together live was at the Blue Whale in Los Angeles, right before the pandemic. And it's incredible group, you know.
Yeah.
All of them are kind of the greatest geniuses on their instruments, you can say, or in the top, very short list of the top people, you know. And the thing I like the most about that trio, and what I have tried to get more for myself in my own playing, which I think I haven't had in the past, is control. Like, it never really gets away from them. They, no matter what they're doing, all three of those guys, I never feel like their body got too tense or they lost focus, or I feel like they're really focused and controlled. And that's my favorite thing about them, you know. And this is a kind of way that I've been trying to go. I mean, I've been a little more wild, I think, in my applications in the past, but I'm trying to get a little more measured, I think, for lack of better. Yeah.
That's interesting.
I mean, that's right now, you know, that's right now, you know.
Yeah, sure. You know, I love the current record and all that stuff where you really, I think you expanded.
I like that
the
one
organ
too. And
trio,
Ben, you know, Ben Monder. Wow, with Ben Monder, what an interesting guy he is, you know. Do you know his albums like Hydra and all that kind of stuff?
Oh man, I
right?
transcribed like all of his solos almost.
Really, his albums are, first of all, that music is really complicated.
Have you ever
and
tried
I don't know
playing his
everything
stuff?
about how, I mean, he takes a real long time to do that stuff. Like,
Yeah,
those are difficult pieces. Sharp 15 chords. I don't even know what that is, really. He's also, have you ever hung out with him? He's a wonderful, funny guy.
Yeah, he's the sense of humor, man. It's amazing. Yeah,
he's a terrific guy. And we used to play chess together, and he plays better than I do. But I would win 1 out of 4 games, and we would be drinking, and it would be enough for me to still enjoy it, you know. I don't know if you know the organist Jared Gold, but he's incredible, and I would never, I never beat him in chess. He would beat me so badly, you know. And you know, if you're always just getting killed, it's not a lot of fun, you know.
Yeah.
He's the best musician I ever played at chess. Also, you know who's amazing at chess is Sam Yahel.
Really? So organ players.
And
that's amazing, man.
And ping pong. Yeah. I never played Sam in chess, but I bet he's like incredible.
Funny, man.
You know, I'm very influenced by, you know, if you talk about people who I'm very influenced by, I would say Sam in a lot of ways. And Larry. I actually had 2 organ lessons in my life. I had 1 organ lesson with Larry Goldings, and I had 1 organ lesson with Sam Yahel.
Wow, okay.
They were both incredible lessons and very different, you know. So I also was in college with Gary Versace. You know Gary? He's
sure, I love him.
Yeah,
guy. Sure.
And you know, neither one of us played organ when we were in college. We were just piano players.
Yeah, I know. What was the
You know, now it's kind of funny. We mostly play it well. Yeah. For a sec, can you say one more time?
Yes, sorry. What was the occasion actually that you picked up the organ? I mean,
it was very by accident. This is the story. I moved to New York in 1994 as a pianist. I had only even touched an organ maybe once before, and I didn't even know how to use it. I was starving. I was still doing some kind of, we call it Chitlin circuit gigs, which is like in the South, kind of roadhouse blues kind of places, which I used to do a lot of when I was a kid. You know, going around in a van with like blues guys.
Really?
And instrument, what's that?
No, really. I didn't know that. Wow.
I played a lot of that kind of music, yeah. And at the time, a new instrument came out called the Hammond XB2, which was kind of the first modern portable Hammond organ keyboard, and it sounded really good. And it was a big deal when it came out. Maybe it came out in 1992. I'm not sure. But I think I got my first credit card, and I just bought one. I maxed it out. I got the organ. Are you drinking bourbon? That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Good for you, man. What kind of bourbon?
It's a what is it? Wood Store Reserve from Kentucky. I'm quite into whiskeys and bourbons, by the way, so I you know. Oh no, Brian, we froze.
Reserve. Good one. That's a good one.
Yeah,
it's a little
yeah,
too sugary for me. I drink mezcal, so I knew.
Yeah,
I've been through all of the boozes. Anyway, so I got this instrument, and I got a 302 Leslie, which is a kind of fancy, smaller Leslie that goes with the organ. It was a very good rig with the cases. I get it delivered to my house. I'm unpacking it in my kitchen, and I lived in East Village. I lived in the building on the cover of Physical Graffiti. Do you know that Led Zeppelin record?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I lived in that building in the East Village on St. Mark's Place. I still live in the East Village. And I'm unpacking the gear, and right that night, I got called by a drummer named Frank Bombera, who's very like Brooklyn Italian accent. Hey, it's Frank Bombera, Brian. I got a gig tonight at St. Mark's Bar, which was on my block. So I went there to play organ. He said, "Do you play organ?" And I'm just unpacking this thing. I said, "Yes." I had no idea how to do it at all.
Shit.
So it went okay, though. Like, I always kind of knew how to play a bass line. I don't think I really knew a lot else about it. I'm not sure. But I started to play at the St. Mark's Bar a lot. And St. Mark's Bar in those days had a lot of great music there. Every Wednesday, they had a bassist named Bobby Vidal with Mambo Makoko. I don't know if you've ever heard of a saxophonist named Jay Collins, who kind of plays roots.
Sure.
So he played at that place all the time. I ended up playing in his trio too. And a lot of people, Ralph LaLama was there.
Really?
So a lot of these people, for the first time they saw me, I was playing organ, not piano. And this is how I started to play organ. Then I started to play in Harlem a lot. And after that, when people would call me, they would call me to play organ. And I learned how to do it. Baptism by fire, kind of, Yeah.
Because I mean, the New York kind of circuit was quite, already Sam was there, Larry Goldings, I guess Jamie Saft.
For organ, there was incredible people here.
Really,
there was a bunch of guys in Newark. I can't remember the name of these gentlemen, but they were incredible. Bobby Forrester was another great guy who was alive. Jack McDuff was still alive.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Preacher Robbins is another big organ dude. Celino Clark. So there was a lot of great people, Even Charles Erland was alive until maybe 2000 or something, So, and Harlem had a very active organ kind of scene.
Yeah.
They had Showman's was there. Preacher had a place called Robin's Nest. There was a bunch of places. So it was a good place to learn to play organ. And at Showman's, they'd have a million saxophone solos, and you'd be playing fast tempos, and it was a really great way to learn how to do it, Yeah. And that's Jack McDuff's organ at Showman's.
Oh, wow.
And, in the old days, I'm sorry I'm talking too much.
No, man, please, it's all about you. I mean, I love that the most. Just please go on.
I remember in the old days, the organ was cool, but it had a lot of quirky mechanical problems. So, the organ on the pedal, you're playing it with your feet. The pedals would stick. So I would have to kind of switch to walking the bass line with my right hand, do kind of this acrobatic
Oh, shit.
little thing where I would pull the pedals up in a certain way to unstick the note. But this is the kind of knowledge about playing the organ which is indispensable when you're playing some instrument that's not in a good, So it was very good to learn how to play organ in Harlem under those difficult circumstances, fast tempos, very long songs. Organ that kind of was,
Yeah.
So it was like when you get on an instrument that really works correctly, it was much easier. But that's how it happened that I came to play the organ.
Wow. I mean, when you came, I mean, I wanted to ask you about previous years. I know I've read you've spent some time in Prague also, which I find quite interesting. But speaking of New York, like when you came to New York, was it hard for you to integrate in the scene, or immediately you started make connections and getting gigs?
It wasn't really that hard. There was tons of gigs, and New York was much less expensive.
Yeah.
Like my rent in the East Village, I was living with a guy. I think I was paying $400 a month in rent.
Wow.
And in those days, to make money, we played lots of club dates in Brooklyn for like mobsters, and they paid pretty well. If you play, these are like they've become like really high maintenance functions now. Like you have to really know the bands are very specialty. They have a whole bunch of different packages. 30 years ago, it was just a bunch of Italians drinking, and everybody played the same songs. Maybe you had one or two, but there was no sampling. There was no stuff like that, so they were pretty easy. And I had a lot of jazz work. I pretty quickly met the Vivino brothers, who were the band on the Conan O'Brien show.
Oh, okay.
And they would be subcontractors for lots of cool gigs in New York. So there was a lot of work. I was even on a soap opera for like 6 months.
Okay.
The Guiding Light, which was a big soap opera.
Oh, man.
Not that I had a big part or anything, but what I'm trying to say is there was a lot of different kinds of work.
Yeah.
So no, it wasn't, especially since I started to play organ, because there was just not as many organ players.
Interesting. Wow. What if we go just a little bit back? You said you started as a piano player, right? And what was the main trigger for you to start exploring like kind of jazz and improvisation? Was there like a specific moment or a record that you heard that you were like,
man, I'm going to show you exactly how it started. So my mother plays the piano very well. She's not a professional pianist. But as a baby, I would walk down and this book would be on the piano. This is...
Okay. Oh, wow. How cool.
Okay. So what I would do is I would open it to a song, and the songs have very nice pictures. Some of them have even bigger kind of pictures. It's very beautifully decorated.
Yeah.
Like here's a song. Okay. And I love the pictures. So I would just walk down to the piano, and this is at 3 years old, open the book to a picture that I liked and just start playing the piano, just staring at the picture. Okay. So I was improvising, you could say, at first. My mother saw that I liked the piano. She gave me a very few lessons, and then I started to study the piano pretty young, 7, 6, something like that.
Oh.
And when I was like 14, I started to work on a lot of gigs. And I knew a booking agent that would put me on gigs. I think by the time I was 17, with like Lou Donaldson or Houston Person.
Seriously?
I played with McIntyre Murphy. Yeah,
wow.
Because they would come to Connecticut, which is where I'm from, on a tour between New Haven and New York and Boston.
Yeah.
And I would just play with a lot of these guys when I was a kid. I did clinics with like the drummer Greg Bissonette, I remember.
Really? Oh, man. Okay.
So I was already doing stuff like that when I was like 17 years old.
Wow.
And I just kind of continued, You know, it was never really a question for me, like what to do. And the Czech Republic, I was playing in one of those Hartford bands, and the bassist for the band, his name was Bob Laramie, was playing with a trumpet player named Lotso Deci, who lived in New Haven, Connecticut, who was an expatriate from the Czech Republic. Not only that, he was close friends with Havel, the president. They were, as a matter of fact, in jail in 1968
Oh my God.
for being against the communists when the Soviets came in Prague Spring. So I started going to the Czech Republic, and like we would play for Havel, you know, like a few years after the wall came down. So that's how I started to go. The story goes one level deeper. I went to Prague for the first time before I moved to New York. The pianist for this trumpet player, Lotso, on the tour before me was named Leon Gruenbaum, and that became my first roommate in that physical graffiti building. So I had just graduated from college. I was in the Czech Republic. I'm my first roommate. I said, "Who's that guy playing piano? He sounds great." He said, "His name is Leon." I said, "Where does he live?" "He lives in New York City." "I want to live in New York City. I'll give you his number." He gave me his number. I called him, and then 3 days later, when I got back, I was living in New York. So
bizarre.
That's how all of that connected up to bring me here.
Wow. How long have you stayed in? Did you stay in Prague?
On and off, you know, I would say about 10 years ago, I was there about half the time.
Wow.
I had Czech girlfriends, and I would be there living with them, you know. And I would also be on tour a lot there. And I'm more in New York. I tried to touring a little bit less. It's, you know, I'm not as young as I used to be. So I try not to, I'm not like constantly on tour anymore. I love the Czech Republic, but you know, the lifestyle is very wild. The food is very, you know, it would be too wild after a while.
Yeah.
So I still go there a lot. I'm there like, I don't know, 2 months a year, I would say.
Well, that's a lot, man.
And I also kind of set up shop there when I go to other places because it's so centrally located in Europe, you know, because I play a lot in Budapest, and I play a lot in Germany and Switzerland. And I usually can go there easily from the Czech Republic.
Sure, it's very easy.
Sometimes I even drive, you know. Yeah, so that's how that all happens.
Interesting, yeah. Yeah, I saw Prague with you, and I was like, man, really? How did you end up in Prague, you know? Like,
I know, it's pretty wild. But, you know, I feel like of any other place that is not the United States, I've really gotten to know the flavor and the character of this country, and it's been very interesting for me, you know. I have a lot of friends there. I would even say I have closer friendships with my Prague people than New York people, just because New York is so, it doesn't have the same kind of social, I mean, you see people socially when you're playing, but you know what I'm saying. Europe has a different, it's different with this. America, it's almost everybody's so driven. They don't make a lot of time for friends, and they don't hang out a lot after their performances or what have you. And that's very different there. So, you know, it was really nice to feel what that felt like.
Yeah. Did you already lead bands when you were in Prague, your own groups?
Not when I went there the first time. I would say I started to lead groups in general about 15 years ago.
Okay. So
that's when I really started, because I was working so much for other people, I almost didn't even have a chance to do that. And then I remember, you know, after the World Trade Center, after 2008, there was kind of a downturn in New York City of places to play. I wanted to have a little more autonomy over what I was doing. So I started to push my things a little more. So I would say 15 years ago, I had my first solo album release with Steeplechase, you know, maybe a little less than that. And that's when I started to lead my own groups, I would say.
How did that connection with Niels and Steeplechase begin?
So I I ended up writing for years for Keyboard magazine.
Ah,
And when I was a kid and would read Keyboard magazine, the guy who would write the instructional articles was Andy Laverne. So I
really?
was working
Okay.
for some reason. I don't remember why Andy contacted me. I think it had something to do with writing for the magazine because he was doing an article. John Regan, who's also a great pianist, put us in touch for some reason. We started talking. He facilitated my first recording with Steeplechase. As a matter of fact, I feel like I recorded a few of Andy's tunes on the album. I'm sure I did. So that's how I met Nils. And I think I recorded 10 albums for Nils in relatively short succession. And so that's how I met Nils. And I still record as a sideband for Steeplechase.
Yeah. You like
I even had one as a leader maybe 2 years ago. The Sextet, the last Sextet album is on Steeplechase.
You like being a band leader? Like, I mean, from the beginning, was it easy for you? I mean, like, to present compositions to
No,
people
it wasn't easy. I had to learn how to do every single thing. I had to learn how to be a publicist and learn how to be insert the blank. I don't really love it. But when I'm in charge, I know that it's going to work a certain way. There's not a lot of, it's more organized. I'm an organized person. Yeah. What I try to do now is strike a balance that's good,
Yeah.
I'll have tours where I will be sometimes a side man and sometimes as a leader. And that is great too,
Yeah.
And if it's in a network of people that I work with or a promoter or club owner that I'm close to, it usually goes pretty smoothly. I mean, it's not great to be the boss when shit hits the fan. That's not great.
Yeah.
But I take it a little better as things go wrong. The principal thing in my life is how music works. Like that's the thing that works the most efficiently in my life, personally.
Yeah.
I actually find it very easy compared to everything else, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, what about composing? Like, you find it easy? I mean, you've written like tons of tunes, and like, how does this?
I don't want to say I find it easily, but I don't labor over it. I do it, and I do it pretty quickly.
What's the process?
I don't agonize. I write with a flute and Sibelius, basically. And I write very quickly, and it's usually because I have a deadline.
Yeah. Okay.
The songs for Jackpot were written in one day while I was playing with the Modern Art Orchestra in Budapest last year. I was playing some like hard music. I was playing some hard music I wrote for them. It was like brass orchestra. And I was writing them in my room, but I wrote them all in one day. Like they're just like, and I kind of just keep going without a lot of editing.
Yeah.
Maybe they would be more profound if I labored over them, but I don't,
No, they're perfect for this record. They're beautiful. I mean, it works amazingly.
I'm writing string quartets right now, and it's going to be different. I'm actually studying string quartets, and I think that's going to be pretty. I'm going to spend a lot of time on that, I think. Okay. But I've just begun, so I don't really know how that's going to go.
Oh, beautiful, yeah. Challenging yourself, I think that's important. Yeah.
It's kind of the only thing that's kind of the only thing is a lot of this. I write for all the other instruments, but not so much for strings yet. So this is why I wanted to do that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Otherwise, I wanted to ask you, how do you decide for a group, actually? One of my favorite records of yours is Upside. Jochen and Ben.
Like, Jochen is incredible.
Yeah, man. It's like, was that like a working trio of yours, or like in general, how did you decide?
Yeah, I think we were playing gigs. I think we were. Jochen is on many of my records. He might be on half of them or more.
incredible drummer. How did you meet
He's a
him?
brilliant
Actually,
drummer. I play in his group now too, and that's very good. The Stars and Garters album. I don't know if you've heard that.
no. Oh shit, I have to check it out. Okay, wow.
That's a new jazz record. Maybe it's a year old by Jochen.
Okay.
Yeah. But he's a genius drummer. You know,
Yeah,
incredible. And then what could you say? You know, so yeah, I wrote those tunes pretty quickly too. I might have written those songs like a day before the session because I found out about that. That was the first Steeplechase one. That was my first recording session.
Yeah, like Silicon Doll, and
I think I
Joker,
found out about it 2 days before the session, and I had to write all those songs. Yeah,
that's incredible. Yeah, it's a nice record. I love that one.
I haven't heard it in a lot. You know, I don't really hear. I don't even have my records because they cost me so much to buy.
Yeah, it's true.
I have a few of them, but many of them I haven't heard in years. You know,
interesting.
I have like 22 U.S. releases too, which is a lot.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what they are. You know.
But it's good, man. You know, it's like writing your diary. That's your musical diary. I think records, that's what they are, where you are in the moment of time. I think that's a nice one. So
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
But speaking of steeplechase and guitarists, you know, I wanted to ask you about Vic Juris, and
sure.
How was your connection with him? How did you guys meet? And you know, for me, he's like one of the most underrated guitarists in jazz, actually. But like, what's your story with Vic?
So I think I just started to play you know, almost all of these people that I play with on these albums, I would almost even say 100% of them, I met playing gigs with them in New York just for years. I was an organist. I would play with Vic and Adam Nussbaum at the 55 bar when Jay Anderson wasn't there.
Oh, wow,
or maybe
okay.
sometimes I would also play with Anthony Pinciotti. And the first time I recorded was with Vic and Anthony on Listen Here. That's a
yeah, I love that one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. Vic actually played in that current band, and he was amazing. And we just did a lot of work together. He plays on my record with George Coleman, Grooving with Big G.
Yeah, I love that.
And we had a great CD release party at the Blue Note that went very well. I know his wife very well. I mean, it was you know, we were friends. It was a tragic loss, you know.
Yeah.
He was such a man, Vic Juris. You know, even the sound of his name, he was so
yeah.
He was just a man's man in a long time ago application of the word. You know, health challenge at the end, he took it like a man. You know, he really did. So he was very inspiring to us for that, I think.
Yeah, it's a
terrific guitarist.
Yeah, oh man, a composer, a really good composer, and yeah. Like,
he would tell this funny joke every night. He said he was playing some festival and Miles Davis was there. I don't remember exactly the joke, but the punchline of the joke was, and what did Miles Davis say about Vic Juris? He said, who the hell is that? And everybody would laugh. He would say the same joke like that was his joke, you know. He would say it every time.
But
he's an incredible guy, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I've never met him. I mean, I have so many of his records and I transcribed so many of his solos, but
he wrote beautiful tunes too, you know. He has nice albums with Kate, his wife, really good. Bands all come from like Florida, Gainesville, Allman Brothers, Leonard Skinner, 38 Special, Tom Petty, I think.
Yeah.
I used to play with J-Mo from the Allman Brothers. He was cool.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, he actually was living in Connecticut when I was a kid and is actually a very good jazz drummer. I think he's primarily a jazz drummer. And J-Mo, I think, would even say that. Because, you know, in the Allman Brothers, they had him and they had Butch Trucks. They had very different functions of what they would do, you know. So JMO, I played with him when I was a kid in Hartford, and then I started to play with him in New York because they would play every Wednesday, like the first Wednesday of the month, in the or something like that. And the guys in the band were all being them, so very nice. Chris Jensen is the saddest when I was, a kid in Hartford. And he had amazing stories about the Allman Brothers and that whole scene down there. And we would do cruises, like Legends of Rock kind of cruises. And we would see some of those bands, like 38 Special I saw. I don't know if you know this band, but for me, it was incredible, because I'm kind of a rocker, that was what I was really into when I was first getting into music. So
yeah, you can sense this with your music, like especially current and
sure, especially with the electronic. I play guitar on some of those early albums. I was like
seriously?
a tapping.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
man.
on the first album, I play tons of guitar. I don't know if you ever heard that one.
No,
it's just called Brian Charette. I'm playing a lot of guitar on that. I sing. You can find it on YouTube, I think, if you just enter it in there.
Okay, I'll try to search for it. Wow, it's incredible. Yeah. It's like organ and guitar. Then that I always connect you with so many guitar players you've played, and it's
sure.
It's incredible that you play guitar also yourself. I mean, I find that.
Well, I don't play,
Well, okay.
I was doing it. I don't do it like like the guys we're talking about. I'm not like that. I would say I'm not a jazz guitarist.
Sure. But you mentioned electronics. When did you start exploring that also? And I know your solo organ stuff, and you're like you're kind of expanding the boundaries of, like you said, you that's why Jackpot.
Electronic, You froze for a sec.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, I didn't hear you. Sorry.
I'm closing my other boxes too. I closed my other stuff too, just to make it a little more.
Now it's better. No, it's better. Yeah.
So electronics, I always loved that music. When I first got into music, like I said, I was into the rock stuff. I was super into Keith Emerson, and yes.
Really?
I actually knew Keith Emerson, which was incredible. Check out this story. So I'm endorsed by Hammond, and so was Keith Emerson. And every summer, every winter, they would have the NAMM show, the show that they have in Anaheim every year. So we would be in the Hammond booth. Some of us would be able to go there and play in the booth, and we'd stay in Anaheim. It would be a great time. I loved it. And we had worked all day in the booth, and we were up at some kind of Hammond mixer. They had a concert at the Marriott that night, which is kind of the big hotel at NAMM. So I'm upstairs at the Hammond mixer in the Anaheim Convention Center, and it's like wine and cheese. I'm reaching for a piece of cheese. There was another guy reaching for some cheese. I look up, and it's Keith Emerson. And of course, I just freak out over him. He was really, really nice, and we played together in the concert that night.
Oh, wow, man.
At the Marriott. Yeah. So it was, to be able to play with one of your heroes, and I was like a freak for him when I was a kid, So anyway, because I was into Keith Emerson and Rick Wakeman of Yes, I was really into the other kinds of keyboards too, Moogs, modular, all this kind of stuff. And I'm super into Kraftwerk. I almost think it's my favorite music in a way. I don't know if you know a lot about this.
Oh, sure. Of course. I'm European, right. Kind of makes sense almost. Yeah.
I'm like crazy about it.
Really? Wow.
I almost think it's the most perfect music in a way.
Wow. Okay.
I was really influenced by that when I first heard it. And when I was recording for Steeplechase, a lot of those records I feel like are very traditional as well. And I wanted to do something different. So when I started to record for Positone, I started to add electronics. Like, I feel like that first album that had a lot of electronics on it was Alphabet City, which I love that album.
I know.
It might be one of my favorites. And that might be with Rudy Royston and Will Bernard.
Yeah.
The album was well received. I was very interested in the sound, and I was very interested in how the electric. I don't know what that's about.
The neighbors are like, man, enough.
That's nothing, man. I live on 14th Street. You should see when they just start killing each other down there. Then it really sounds loud. So anyway, what was I saying?
Yeah,
electronics, right?
Electronics, yeah.
Alphabet City. So I started to get some of these interesting synthesizers. Let me show you what they look like. So I don't know if you've seen my stream, but this is
what it
looks like in here. Yeah. So I just started to get. Can I turn this around? Let me see.
Oh yeah, super.
I just started to get a lot of these weird synthesizers and drum machine. You know,
wow.
So little teenage engineering things. And it really came. I wanted to do something solo, and it was really appealing to me that I could accompany myself. You know, and you guys. Sorry.
Shit. Come on, it's okay. It's New York. That's good. It's part of the interview.
And then what really happened is we had the pandemic, and we were shut in for years. You know, so that's when I started to do the stream. Current came out before that. I was still doing it with the band, but I feel like when the electronics, I really started to get into the solo electronic stuff was during the pandemic, because I was just by myself.
Yeah.
And I recorded Like the Sun, you know, on lockdown, you know. So that's how. You know, I still do the stream every Tuesday. Like, I'm really into playing solo electronica. It's not super easy to do live.
Yeah, sure.
Set stuff. So I don't know if I've really pursued it in a live context to the degree that I do it when I do the stream. But I like to have an extra keyboard. I like to have some samples with the stuff. I do it sometimes in the Czech Republic. I have a band with Dano Šoltis and Ondřej Stvereček in Prague, and we play kind of electronic like that, or I give loops to the drummer and stuff. But you know, as soon as you start to add that stuff, it's a little more complicated in a live situation.
You would need like some clicks or something, or
Yeah, and it's just a lot of times if you're at a festival, you got like 30 minutes. You know, sure. If something goes wrong, it can be pretty. That's why I like just playing organs sometimes, because you get in there, you turn it on, and you're kind of ready to go. You know?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you also one thing, which is like, you know, I have the record Booga Loogaloo by Oz Noy.
By Oz, yeah,
and like you're on a couple of tracks, you know, with some of my heroes, Dave Weckl and Vinnie Colaiuta.
You know, I played on 3 of those records. I played with Weckl, Dennis Chambers, and Vinnie Colaiuta.
How was that like for you, man? I mean,
incredible. Especially, I have to say, Vinnie Colaiuta.
Yeah, Vinnie. I mean, he's one of my favorite players ever. Like,
I've never heard, you know, very interesting. The first day of the session, we actually recorded at Sweetwater Sound. You know, this place is like a big mail order.
Sure.
So they have a whole complex there in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which is gorgeous. They have an amazing kitchen. They have a slide you could slide down. It's a pretty cool place. And the guy, he might have just sold it, but the guy, Chuck, who was running the place, everybody loved him. You know, he was a very revered father kind of figure. And I think it's an amazing company. And I would go there a lot to do stuff for Hammond when they're talking about new instruments. And all of Oz's albums, all of those 3, Snapdragon, whatever those 3 albums are, I can't, Boogalooga Ooh, Snapdragon, and one other one, are recorded at Sweetwater.
Wow, I know that.
So I remember the first day of the session, for some reason, I could only see this much of Vinny's right arm. And I never saw an appendage move with so much intricacy of motion. You know, I could only see his arm. And it looked like the biggest killing machine I've ever seen. He was a super cool hang. He said his first gigs were playing organ because I think he's from the Pittsburgh area. I'm not sure who he was playing with. I can't remember. But hanging out with all of those guys was amazing. And they do an interesting thing at Sweetwater where they would have, like, they actually sell tickets to the recording sessions, and people can come to the sessions and you go out with them in the evening and you have this big, amazing dinner and people can ask you questions. And it's a very social kind of thing. And just to hang out with them and eat and learn. Dave Weckel's super into cars. I am too. You know, Will Lee was on those sessions. I don't know if you know Will. He's an incredible hand.
James Ginos and Patitucci and all these guys
knows so much about so many things. And you know, Will Lee and Anton Fig, that's the rhythm section for like Ace Frehley's solo album.
Yeah,
like, those guys can play the most esoteric jazz music, and they're playing on amazing rock records from the 70s too. Yeah. So it was a great experience. James Ginos was on bass on one of those. Patitucci was on the one with Weckel.
Yeah.
No, Patitucci was on the one with Calida. He's like an angel, you know. He's like a angelic kind of person, you know. I've never really met a musician of his kind of clout who was so accessible, you know. Yeah. It was an amazing experience. Oz is also a dear friend for many years.
Yeah. It's beautiful. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about those, you know, playing with kind of your heroes in a way also. Like, you know, these guys are amazing, you know. And
George Coleman, I mean, that's incredible. I played with Chaka Khan. That was pretty amazing.
Really? How did you end up that gig?
Years ago, I used to play for a concert promoter named Danny Capillion, who would put on big themed concerts. He had a concert about the music of the Talking Heads that I played on. I would also work with Vernon Reid on these concerts. You know, this
Seriously?
guitarist.
Oh man,
because my roommate,
I love
my roommate,
color,
he's amazing. My roommate Leon, the one I was telling you about from the Czech tour, played in Vernon Reid's Mask. That's how I knew Vernon. So sometimes when they would get these big gigs with this gentleman, Danny Capillion, I would be playing keyboards and Leon would as well. So for this particular concert, we were playing in Central Park. The concert was called Joni's Jazz. It was the jazz music of Joni Mitchell. And they had incredible singers on the concert. Chaka Khan, Joe Jackson, Jane Siberry, Toshi Reagan, Duncan Sheik. Joni Mitchell sang too. So, and it was in Central Park. You know, so pretty amazing. At the time, this is interesting. You know, Chaka used to live in Germany for years, and my girlfriend at the time was German. So she was at the concert and was talking to Chaka, and they both lived in New Jersey, and they became they would call each other on the phone and speak in German.
That's amazing. Yeah. Wow, that's incredible, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. But yeah.
I was here, so they're repointing the bricks on my building, you know.
Oh,
and they broke my window like a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm sleeping. Glasses everywhere.
Shit. Oh God. But
difficult. Here
difficult.
It comes. Yeah. Difficult town.
Yeah. But obviously they want us to end, you know. But like, what's in your schedule for the upcoming months, and you know, gig wise or album wise, what are the plans?
You know, I'm trying to record a big band organ record. I'm hoping to do it at Van Gelder with Cellar Live again. I've only spoken just briefly about it.
Wow.
But, you know, it's logistically not the super easy. It's like 17 pieces plus drums and organ at least. So it's a lot of people, but I would very much like to do that.
Wow.
I'm going to play February 1st piano at Mesro with Jochen. and
Oh,
Alex
seriously?
Claffey, who's a great
Yeah,
bass
no,
player.
Alex. Yeah, sure.
And then I'm going to go to the West Coast. I'm going to play in Las Vegas, like maybe the 4th and 5th of February, and then I'm going to play in LA. And in LA, I have an incredible band that I'm playing with. Doug Webb is a great saxophonist, Jimmy Vivino from the Conan Show, and Danny Carey from Tool. And we have kind of like a fusion group that we play in LA. And I'm going to play in Squash Grapes in Ventura a couple times in the Baked Potato.
How did you end up with Danny, actually?
Just from playing at the Baked Potato in LA. He plays there a lot. He's a super cool guy and just loves to play gigs with people. You know, he just rolls up in an old pickup truck and with his drums. They don't even have cases.
Shit.
And it's just, he has a lot of students and follow him. They help him set up. He's a super cool guy, super down to earth. You know, like he doesn't have to do anything, but he enjoys it.
Yeah.
You know,
that's beautiful. Oh, fantastic, man. Wow, super.
Yeah.
Well, if you're in Europe the next time, drop me a line, please, and let me know.
Dr. Jazz.